All our building blocks are ready. So now let's build the account screen. This is probably going to take 10 minutes of our time. So here in the screens folder, let's add a new file called accountscreen.js. We start by creating a function component. Now we want to wrap everything inside our screen component. Now VS Code doesn't suggest auto-importing this component. I'm not sure why. It doesn't like this component. So we have to manually import it on the top. Import screen from. Currently we are in the screens folder. So we go one level up, then to components and screen. Now here on the top, we want to have a list item. So list item. Once again, I'm not sure why VS Code is not suggesting to import this. So let's manually import it on the top. We import list item from our components folder. Now, we should give this 3 props. Title, we set it to our name. Subtitle, we set it to an email. And image, we set this to, here we use the require function. Then we go to our assets folder and load some image. Let's test our implementation up to this point. So save the changes. Now we go to app.js and here we render our account screen. So account screen. This time auto importing worked. So it's kind of flaky. I'm not sure why. Now, here's what we get. Looks good to me. Now below this list item, we want to have a flat list with 2 menu items. As I told you before, I want to wrap this inside a container and give it some vertical margin. So back to account screen. On the top, let's type imrn to import style sheet from React Native. Then down below, we're going to create a styles object. So rnss. We're going to create a container here and give it a margin vertical of 20 pixels. Now, let's wrap this inside a container. So we add a view and give it the style of container. Now let's move the list item inside this view. So here's our first container. Then we add another container. So I'm going to copy this line and paste it over here. So in the second container, we're going to add a flat list. That is really easy. Flat list. Now we should set 3 props here. The first prop is data. We should set this to an array of objects. So I'm going to create this array outside of our function component because we don't want to recreate this array every time our component gets re-rendered. So let's create an array called menu items. Here we add an object and set its title to my listings. Now we should also give this an icon. So let me put this on a new line. I'm going to set the icon to an object with 2 properties, name and background color. For this menu item, I'm going to use an icon called format-list-bulleted. And I'm going to set the background color to our primary color. So let's import our color palette. Import colors from config/colors. Now I just noticed that VS Code imported the flat list from React Native gesture handler. I'm not sure if this is going to work properly. We should make sure to import flat list from React Native. So this is one of the problems with auto import. I love it. It's a great productivity tool, but sometimes it imports an object from the wrong package. So always double check this. So now let's remove this flat list. Okay. So on the top, we have all the import statements from third-party libraries. And then we have all the import statements from our code. Now, back to our menu item, we set the background color to colors.primary. Now let's duplicate this object. For our second menu item, we're going to set its title to my messages. The name of its icon should be email, and the background color should be secondary. Now, let's pass this array to the data prop, menu items. The second prop we have to set here is key extractor. And with this, we can uniquely identify each item. how can we uniquely identify each menu item here? Do we need an ID property? No, we can just use their title. So item goes to item.title. We could also rename this to menu item for consistency. Finally, the third prop is render item. Now, as I told you before, we set this to a function. This function has an argument. We need to destructure that and pick the item property. Okay? So we get this item, and here we render a list item. Now, we should set the title to item.title. And here we should set the icon. So icon component, I just realized that I called this prop image component. So that is a mistake I made in the previous lesson. That is a result of working late. So technically this should be icon component. We'll come back and fix this later. Let's set this to an icon. So we use our icon component here. We set its name to item.icon.name and background color to item.icon.background color. Pretty simple, right? So let's save the changes and preview our app. So it looks good. Now I would like to give the screen a background color so these many items stand out. So on the top, let's give the screen a style. We set this to styles.screen and then create it down below. So we set screen to an object and set its background color to colors.light. Now save the changes. This is not working because our screen component doesn't support additional styles. So let's go to our screen component. This is really easy to fix. We need to add an extra prop here called style and then apply it over here. We've already done this before. So here we pass an array. The first object in this array is the screen object that we created over here. And the second object is the style that we pass as a prop. Now save. Okay, our screen has a light gray background. You may not notice it because list items have the same background color. Well, more accurately, they don't have a background color. So what we see here is the background of our screen. So to make the list items pop out, we have to set their background color to white. So let's go to our list item component. So here's the container for each list item. We set the background color to colors.white. Now here we're breaking the rule. So this may impact the reusability of this component because maybe somewhere else in a different app, we don't want our list items to have a white background. But in this course, I'm not intending to create a completely reusable list item component that we can use in every kind of app. So I'm designing this component mainly for this app. So it's okay to break the rules in this context. So let's save the changes. And we get this beautiful interface. Now one thing is missing, and that is the separator component. So back to the account screen. Here's our flat list. Let's set its separator. So it's called item separator component. We set this to list item separator component. Once again, VS Code didn't pick this up. I'm not sure what's going on here. Maybe I have to do a restart. So let's import this component. We import list item separator component from this module. Save the changes. And here's our separator. Beautiful. Now the last part, we need to add the logout menu here. So after our second container, we add another container. Now in this case, we don't really need this container, so we can just use a list item. Now we set its title to logout and its image component, or more accurately, icon component, to an icon. The name of this icon is logout, and I'm going to set its background color to, where is my cheat sheet? Okay, it is FFE66D. Now in this case, I'm hard coding this value here. I don't want to add it to our color palette because it is likely that tomorrow we're going to have a bunch of menu items here and we're going to have different colors. These colors are specific to the icons for this screen. They're not part of our color palette. So I don't want to pollute our color palette with too many colors. So save the changes And here's the final result. Let's see how it looks on Android. It looks beautiful to me. Now, the last thing I want to do here is rename image component to icon component. So we press F2 here and rename this to icon component. Let's make sure that it's updated over here as well. Beautiful. What about our component? It's not updated here. So let's rename this to icon component as well. Now we're just going to add an alias here. So it thinks when we use the list item component, we set the image component prop. So that is why it kept the prop name, but it gave it an alias. So internally it's called icon component. Now in this case, we can safely remove the alias and just use icon component because we removed the prop outside of this component. Let's make sure everything is working. Beautiful. So we're done here. Let's move on to the next task.